for me to introduce our final speaker. We are incredibly grateful for the support she's shown for the 2050 Climate Group, and it's wonderful to have her here today to speak about Scotland's future and answer your questions. Please join me in welcoming the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon.
And somebody just press a button on this laptop to change the screen, so it is absolutely a dead cert that I'm going to manage to muck it up while I'm up here. So apologies in advance if something else comes up on the big screen. Thank you so much to all of you for inviting me to be here today to bring your session to a close. I know that there are many of you that have put an amazing amount of work into today's event, and I want to thank you for that. I've no doubt you've had a really interesting, inspiring day where you've been able to talk about some of the biggest challenges that we collectively face as a country, a society, and indeed as a planet. So it's a huge privilege for me to come and play a part in your proceedings today. Of course, the reason that this forum exists, the reason why we believe and know that leadership on this issue is so important, is that climate change is, without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest environmental, economic and moral issue it faces today. We know that if the world fails to meet the ambitions that were set out in the Paris Agreement just a few years ago, ambitions of limiting climate change to well under 2 degrees Celsius, then the consequences of that will be very, very serious for all of us. It will mean rising ocean levels, more famine, a higher frequency of extremely severe storms, and almost certainly a displacement of populations far beyond what we have seen from recent conflicts over the past few years. So there's no doubt at all that the effects of our failure to meet that moral challenge will be deeply damaging for all nations, and it will be more than that for some. For some nations across the world, our failure to meet this challenge will be quite simply catastrophic. So taking urgent, significant action to address climate change is first and foremost, and I think I've probably used this word already on more than one occasion since I started speaking. First and foremost, it is an overwhelming moral challenge. And I think it's important that we see it like that. We owe it to this generation, but even more importantly, we owe it to the generations to come not to be found wanting when it comes to facing and meeting this challenge. And I think while that is true for people right across the planet, it is particularly true for those of us who live in developed nations. For those of us whose actions, not just today but in the past, have done so much to contribute to the challenges that we face today, we must also be in the vanguard and take the lead when it comes to meeting these challenges and addressing climate change for the future. So that's the scale and the nature of the challenge. But I'm a great believer, and I know this is a view that will be shared by most, if not all of you in this room. It's important that we don't just see addressing climate change as a challenge. Moving to a low-carbon economy, and this is a point that I believe really strongly that we need to emphasise more and more. Moving to a low-carbon economy is also a huge opportunity for all of us. It's a massive opportunity to build a country that is healthier, fairer and more prosperous, with more highly skilled, productive jobs in the future. We know that new technologies in Scotland and in many countries are already creating new jobs, and here at home in Scotland, the low carbon sector already employs almost 60,000 people across the country. We also know that improving energy efficiency will not just make homes warmer, but also more affordable to heat in the future. And by promoting low carbon ways of travelling, by promoting cycling and walking, we don't just help the environment, but we also reduce pollution, and by investing also in low carbon cars and vehicles, we reduce pollution, we improve health, we clean up the air that all of us breathe, and it's no exaggeration to say that in doing that we save lives as well. So for all those reasons, and no doubt many more besides, I'm determined as First Minister that Scotland will continue to be a world leader, both in facing up to the challenge of climate change, but also in seizing these new opportunities for economic and social progress. And that's why we have already in Scotland set the most stringent emissions reduction targets anywhere in the world. Scotland already has the third best record out of the EU 15 countries for reducing emissions. We've now published a detailed climate change plan which makes clear the scale of our ambition in the years ahead. Using 1990 as the baseline, we will reduce our emissions by 2/3 by 2032, and crucially, and this is something that actually sets us apart from most other countries across the world, we are required by statute to report on these targets each and every year. We're also here in Scotland promoting and supporting the innovation that we know is required for a low carbon world. You're here in this city, Glasgow. We are one of Europe's leading centres for offshore wind research. The world's most powerful wind turbines were installed in Aberdeen Bay just this month, and the waters around our country are also home to the world's largest tidal array and the world's very first offshore floating wind farm. So we're at the cutting edge already of the clean, green, renewable energy that will be needed in the years and decades to come. We're also very fortunate, although it is the result of hard work and a lot of ingenuity and dedication, to have significant strengths as a country in areas like battery storage and smart grids, and we are acknowledged leaders in developing a circular economy, one where we keep materials in use for longer rather than disposing of them. And we want to encourage more of that innovation. For example, we've made it very clear that promoting a low carbon economy will be a key mission of the new National Investment Bank that we are in the early stages of setting up right now. And all of this will bring important economic and environmental benefits. And I also think, even more than that, it speaks somehow to Scotland's history. It speaks to our sense of who we are and who we want to be as a country. After all, Scotland has a long and proud tradition of being at the forefront of invention and innovation. Through inventions like James Watt's steam engine, we were a country that helped to pioneer the Industrial Revolution. So we should now, unashamedly and with no limit on our ambition, we should aspire to be the pioneer of the low carbon age. And given the levels of talent, of ingenuity and of innovation that we already have in Scotland, there is no doubt that that is a realistic ambition. We can aim to invent, to develop and to manufacture the innovations of the future, not simply to consume those innovations. And as we do that, I am determined to ensure that the transition is a just one. I know you've just been talking about and hearing about the just transition to a low carbon future. And there's no doubt that that move to a low carbon future, if we're going to take everybody with us, is one that must benefit everybody across our country. Because the implications of what we are doing will be felt by everybody across our country. The action we need to take in the years ahead will affect how we travel, it will change how we heat our homes, it will require cultural shifts as we move from being a throwaway culture. And it's also going to be a big change to our economy. It will keep on creating new jobs and also, indeed, disrupting existing industries as well. The point that our friends in the audience here are no doubt trying to make. So overall, as I've said, these changes should be hugely beneficial, and all of us have a responsibility to ensure that everybody across society, of all ages and at all stages of their working lives, have a fair chance to share in those benefits. And that's why we have taken the decision in Scotland to establish a Just Transition Commission. Because a key principle of that will be to ensure that as our economy changes, as the way we live our lives necessarily changes, our objective is to make sure that nobody is left behind in that transition. So that ambition and that determination to ensure that what we need to do to make the transition benefits everybody, I think sets Scotland apart from many other countries across the world. But of course, we have a responsibility not just to do the right thing here at home. We also have a responsibility to help other countries and to help the global movement towards climate change. Because fundamentally, the principle at the heart of the just transition is social justice. And that shouldn't just apply at home, that should apply globally as well. That's why we were the first country in the world to establish a climate justice fund, recognising that developing nations which tend to have contributed the least towards climate change are the countries that are worst affected by climate change. Sustainability is also at the heart of our wider international development work. As many of you know, the President of Malawi has been in Scotland over the past week, and climate change was one of the issues we were discussing with him and his delegation. That's already an area where Scotland and Malawi work closely together. Through the work that Scotland supports in Malawi, we've helped to bring renewable energy to more than 80,000 people in rural Malawi. And we're also helping Malawi to mitigate the impacts of climate change, for example, through partnership on issues such as water management. And we want to strengthen those links in future. And that's why we're delighted to support the initiative that the 2050 Climate Group agreed last week to work with the Malawi-Scotland partnership in Longway. And that initiative will help Malawi's future leaders to think about, to mitigate and to tackle climate change. I'm glad to say the Scottish Government will help to fund that initiative, but it's the day-to-day operations that will matter, and they will be decided by you and your partners in Malawi. And what that means is that people in this room and your successors in this group will be using your ideas, your experiences and your expertise, not simply to show leadership on climate change here at home, but also to help leaders in Malawi to show that same ambition there. So the final point I want to make today is about the importance of your leadership. Governments, of course, and this should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway, governments have an overwhelming obligation to be at the forefront of efforts to tackle climate change. And I believe the Scottish Government is living up to that responsibility. It doesn't mean you'll agree with everything we do, but you should take pride in the fact that our country is recognised. So climate change is an issue where everybody, in different roles and to different degrees, has a big part to play. And that's why your work now and for many years to come will be so hugely important. So whether in your day-to-day lives you're coming up with new technologies, products and services, or whether you're reducing climate change emissions where you work or raising awareness, or whether you're simply making changes in your own lifestyles, all of you are and can continue to be leaders in tackling climate change. And by doing that, you will be helping to address what I said at the start is the biggest environmental, economic and moral challenge of our time. And you'll be playing your part, as you are by being here today, in building a fairer and more prosperous society, not just here at home, but right around the world. So that's why I think the work of this forum matters so much. Matters to the Scottish Government, but not just to the Scottish Government. It matters to Scotland as a whole, and it matters to the world that we live in. So I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to speak to you today. I now look forward to your questions, but more than that, I look forward to working with you in the months and years to come. Thank you very much.